Hi, thanks for joining me for this week's Start to Finish Sunday project. Today I am going to make a sympathy card, and I'm going to share with you one of my favorite techniques, which is called the watercolor background technique. So to start out with, here I have a piece of watercolor paper, and then I also just have this piece of plastic, and this is what we're going to create the background on. This is actually just a regular page protector that I just cut. I just put it in my paper trimmer and I cut off the three sides, and then obviously it's open on the fourth. So I have two pieces now, and you can clean these up when you're done and you can reuse them tons of times. And you're also going to need a Stampin' Spritzer. This, you can see I marked it, it just has water in it. And I like to do this technique with a monochromatic color palette, so you get a really cool ombre effect, which is very in right now. You could certainly do it with 3 different colors, or more than 3 if you like. To create more of a rainbow effect. But for today, I'm using Pool Party, Island Indigo, and Not Quite Navy. This is one of my favorite color combinations in the blue family because they all have sort of a greenish teal undertone to the blue. Now I'm just working on my page protector here, and I'm going to take each ink pad and just smush it onto the page protector, and it can be a little bit hard to see if you need to put some scratch paper underneath to make sure that you're getting the ink down, but all I'm doing is just smushing the ink onto the page protector. Here's a full page of scrap paper so you can see what I'm doing a little bit better. And then I'll take the next darkest color and smush that down right below the Pool Party. And then I'll take my darkest color, which is the Not Quite Navy, and this is one of the new firm foam stamp pads. The other two in my collection are the old ones. I've actually never done this technique with this, so we're going to see how that works out today. So we'll just do the same thing, just smush it. Oh, it's thicker, it's stickier. Now this is the fun part. I'm just going to take my Stampin' Spritzer, just with plain water in it, and I'm going to spritz this all over the ink until it really starts to pool up and the colors run together a little bit. You want it to be good and wet. And then I'm just going to take my piece of watercolor paper, stick it down, give it a good wiggle, give it a good smush, a little bit up and down to get that nice blending, a little bit side to side. Give it a really nice smush. And you're going to get ink all over the place. That's what's fun about this technique. If you want to put gloves on, you certainly can. And I'll lift that up, tap off some of the excess. Now if you want to clean this up right now, you can, but I'm going to use it a little bit more, so I'm just going to go ahead and dry this with my heat tool, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so I dried my watercolor paper most of the way with the heat tool, and you can see how much it really has lightened up. Now this part of the technique I learned from Christina Werner, and I think this is really fun. I'm just going to take my watercolor paper, and you can see I just left this exactly the way it was, except I blotted up some of the really, really big splotches. And all I'm going to do is just tap my paper, and wherever I think it needs a little bit more color or a little bit more interest, I'm just going to tap it into the ink. So just do that and just kind of take a look at it as you go. Trying to get a little bit more Pool Party up there. Let's get a little bit more of the dark color down here. Just tapping it kind of randomly, kind of watching it as I go, and you can see how you get that really cool kind of splotchy effect. So now I'm going to go ahead and dry this thoroughly with my heat tool again, and I'm also just going to take a baby wipe and clean up my page protector and clean up my work surface with this as well, and then you can see this cleans up perfectly, and you can certainly use it again for more projects. So here's a closer look at my dried watercolor piece, and you can see just how awesome that came out. I love this look because you can use it for so many different cards. So I'm going to set this aside for now, and I'm going to work on my card base. My card base is crumb cake, and it's just a standard size top folding card. And I'm going to do a little bit of background stamping. I'm using this distressed polka dot stamp and some crumb cake ink to give us a nice tone on tone effect. It'll just add some texture to the card base. And when I'm stamping with background stamps, what I like to do is leave it face up on my desk like this. Take my card base and just carefully place that on top. Now, obviously, I don't mind getting my hands inky, but I find that it is easier to use a piece of scratch paper over the top, and that allows me to get nice, even pressure and to make sure that I'm getting all the way to the edges of the card base. Make sure that at all times one hand is still and the other hand is pressing around your stamp. Then remove your scratch paper, carefully remove your card base, and you get a great background stamp image. Now I've trimmed down my watercolor piece to about 1.5 inches wide, and I'm going to trim down the length once I get it placed onto my card. I also have a piece of the Sale-a-Bration Sycamore Street designer paper. This is the Pool Party and Whisper White pattern, and this is 3/4 inch wide, and again I'm going to trim down the length once I get it positioned on my card. And I've also punched out 3 butterflies. I used both butterfly punches that Stampin' Up has available, and I punched the large one out of Pool Party and then one of the small ones out of each of the Island Indigo and the Not Quite Navy, which are the ink colors that we used on the watercolor paper. I'm also going to prep my sentiment, and I'm using the I'm So Sorry sentiment from the Teeny Tiny Wishes stamp set and some black StazOn ink. And I just have a scrap of Whisper White here that I'm going to stamp this on. Oops, I'm going to try that one more time, see if I can't get more even pressure. That looks a little bit better. I have one of the framelits from the Bitty Banners collection, which actually works really wonderfully with the Teeny Tiny Wishes stamp set. And I'm just going to line that up, and you can see I'm putting it so that the sentiment is closer to the right-hand side of the banner. Just put a post-it note over top to keep that in place and run this through my Big Shot. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut banner ends into both of my strips of cardstock. Now I also want to put a little bit of adhesive on the end of this banner. I'll go ahead and place that behind the butterfly. I'm just trying to decide where I want to put these 2 pieces. And I think that I like that placement. I'm just going to cut this off about there. And I'll go ahead and adhere it to my card base. And then this is going to go a little bit up from that and most of the way across the card. So I'll do the same thing. I'll just cut it off. And then certainly save this piece. You can use that on another project. Because this is a heavier paper, and also because the water and heating it with the, or drying it I should say, with the heat tool kind of warped it a little bit, I am going to add some extra adhesive. And then I'll go ahead and line this up, just overlapping it slightly with that pattern paper. Now I can open up my card and trim off the extra. And I also want to add a little piece of this ribbon. This is from the Sale-a-Bration, I believe it's the Sycamore Street ribbon and button pack. So I just want to overlap that slightly, or do I want it shorter? No. Gonna put that right over the seam, and to stick that down I'm just gonna put a little bit of Tombow Mono multi-glue along the center of the ribbon. I'll just place that on just like that, and then once I leave that for a second to dry, I can trim off the end. And now all I need to do is just kind of place my butterflies, get an idea of where they're gonna go. And now I'm going to cut a few Stampin' Dimensionals in half and place these on the backs of the butterflies. Now I'll just go ahead and adhere these down. I'm going to do the two on the outside first so that I can have the spacing so that they're spaced about the same distance from the edges here. This guy needs to go up a little bit. Okay. Now I'll go ahead and actually I'm going to put one more little piece of dimensional to support the banner. And now I will center that butterfly in between the other two. Okay, and for a final touch, I'm going to take some of my basic pearls. I'm going to use the medium-sized pearls and create a little sort of body down the center of the largest butterfly. And there's my finished card. So thank you very much for joining me for today's video. I hope that you enjoyed this project and that you have fun playing with the watercolor background technique. And I will see you next week for another video. Until then, happy stampin'. Bye-bye.